Hello everyone, wishing you all a beautiful day. Today we're diving into part 2 of James and Diep's emotional journey, a story filled with redemption, danger, and unexpected twists. As James faces the consequences of his gambling addiction, Diep steps up in ways no one expected. Can love survive when debts come knocking? Stick around to find out. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. The morning air was heavy with mist as James stepped outside, bleary-eyed and hollow. The house felt colder without Diep, even though it was summer. Her absence had turned their home into a shell, silent, empty, unforgiving. He stood in the garden, staring at the soil she had worked on every morning. The weeds were creeping in now, almost like they sensed she was gone. His chest tightened with guilt. He hadn't just let her down, he had pushed her away. His phone buzzed. Kwan. 24 hours, no more delays. James felt the blood drain from his face. He had nothing left to sell, nothing left to pawn. The debts weren't just numbers anymore, they were threats, real ones. He remembered Kwan's cold stare, the unspoken promise of what would happen if he failed. Later that day, James sat in town on a splintered bench outside the gas station, smoking nervously. He had one last idea. He pulled out his cracked phone and called an old friend, Koa, a mechanic he used to bet with. Koa, I need a favor. A pause. If it's money, I don't have it. I just need a ride to Phuoc Thang Casino tonight. Koa hesitated. You're seriously going back there? James, don't be stupid. You already lost everything. I can win it back, James said, voice hoarse. I have a system now, just one more chance. Another long pause. Then Koa muttered, I'll pick you up at 6. This is the last time, man. At the same time, Diep stood in a small flower field about 50 kilometers away. She had taken the job she saw on the flyer, temporary work at a regional flower farm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. The scent of fresh petals, the soft rustle of leaves, everything here felt quiet, calm, predictable. And yet her heart still ached. She missed home. She missed the old James, the man who used to make her laugh in the rain and dance barefoot on the kitchen floor. But that man was buried under piles of losses and lies. A woman named Thao, the farm owner, approached her with a smile. You're good with flowers, she said. Ever think of doing this full time? Diep smiled faintly. I used to think I'd spend my whole life growing things, but sometimes love pulls you into storms you never saw coming. Back in town, James sat in the back of Koa's truck as they sped down the dark highway toward Phuoc Thang Casino. His heart pounded like a drum. He had managed to borrow just enough money for one game, one shot. Koa glanced at him. You sure about this? James nodded. If I don't come back with enough, Kwan will come after me, and maybe after Diep too. Koa gritted his teeth. Then maybe you should be calling the police, not gambling again. James didn't answer. Deep down, he knew Koa was right, but he wasn't ready to face law or loss. He only knew how to fight back the only way he'd ever learned, by doubling down. Inside the casino, the lights were blinding. Music pulsed through the air, and the sound of chips clinking made James's skin crawl with both excitement and dread. He walked straight to the baccarat table, his game of choice. The dealer dealt the cards. James bet everything. He won the first hand. His breath caught. He bet again. Another win. Koa, watching from the bar, looked surprised but cautious. James began to feel it, the rush, the thrill, the sense that maybe, just maybe, luck was on his side tonight. But luck is a dangerous liar. On the fourth hand, James lost. Badly. He tried again, and lost again. He tried doubling his last bet, desperate to recover. The cards turned cold. His stack of chips disappeared like water down a drain. Within 30 minutes, he was back to zero. He staggered out into the parking lot, shaking, cursing under his breath. Koa followed. "That's it. You're done." James fell to his knees beside the truck, fists clenched. "What am I going to do? They're going to kill me." "No," Koa said firmly. "You're going to tell the truth. To Diep, to the cops, whatever it takes. But this is suicide." James didn't reply. His mind was spinning, not just with fear, but with shame. He had failed again. Meanwhile, at the flower farm, Diep sat on her small cot inside the workers' cabin. She stared at her phone, debating whether to call him. She missed his voice. Even now, after everything, a part of her still believed he could change. She texted, "Are you okay?" No reply. Then another text, this time from an unknown number. "Your man's in deep. He's out of time." Deep's heart froze. She didn't recognize the number, but somehow she knew who it was from. She grabbed her bag and ran out into the night. By sunrise, James was back at the farm. Dirt covered his clothes, his eyes were sunken, and he looked 10 years older than the man Diep left behind just days ago. He stood in the middle of the front yard, staring at the horizon as if expecting her to come home. Behind him, a car slowly pulled up. 2 men stepped out. James didn't move. One of them spoke calmly. "Where's the money?" James looked them dead in the eye. "I don't have it." The man nodded to the other, who opened the trunk. James's fingers curled into fists. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Do whatever you want, but leave her out of it." The men exchanged glances. One took a step forward. "And then," a voice behind them, "touch him, and I swear to God." It was Diep, standing at the edge of the driveway, eyes blazing, fists clenched. The gravel crunched beneath Diep's shoes as she stepped closer, her voice unwavering despite the fear pounding in her chest. "I said touch him, and you'll have to go through me first." The 2 men turned, surprised. James, still on his knees, stared at her in disbelief. She looked tired, pale, but fiercely determined. The taller man, clearly the leader, raised an eyebrow. "You think this is a game, lady?" Diep didn't flinch. "No, I think you're used to people being afraid of you, but I'm not afraid. Not anymore." The air went still. James finally stood, brushing dust from his jeans. "Diep, what are you doing here?" "I got your message," she said, without looking at him. "Well, not yours. But someone thought I should know what kind of trouble you were in." James clenched his jaw. "You shouldn't have come." Too late. The shorter thug snorted. "This some kind of reunion. Cute, but it doesn't pay the debt." Diep glanced at them, then back at James. "How much?" James shook his head. "Too much. I lost everything." She took a deep breath. "I have some savings, enough to buy time, maybe." "No," James said sharply. "I'm not letting you pay for my mistakes." "James," she said firmly, "if they hurt you, I won't forgive myself. Let me help." The leader held up a hand, interrupting. "Look, I don't care who pays, but someone better have something now." James reached into his pocket. and handed over a small stack of crumpled bills, barely enough to cover interest. The man looked unimpressed. Then Diep stepped forward and pulled out a folded envelope from her jacket. Inside was a bundle of cash, her entire savings from the flower farm. "Take this, it's all I have," she said. The man opened it, counted quickly, then smiled thinly. "This buys you 2 more weeks. After that we won't be this polite." They turned and walked away, tires spitting gravel as their car vanished down the road. The silence after they left was heavier than before. James collapsed onto the front steps. Diep sat beside him, hugging her knees. He looked at her, eyes hollow. "Why did you do that?" "Because," she said softly, "even after everything, I still believe in the man you were." James dropped his head into his hands. "That man's gone, Diep." "No," she whispered. "He's just buried. But he's not gone." Tears stung his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he didn't try to hide them. Over the next few days, things began to shift. James, spurred by Diep's courage, finally reached out for help. He met with a small addiction support group in town and started therapy sessions at the community clinic. He confessed everything, his gambling, the lies, the debts, to both the counselor and Diep. It wasn't easy. Each conversation felt like tearing open an old wound, but somehow in the honesty there was healing. Diep returned to the farm with him. She started planting again. James helped, even if awkwardly at first. They worked in silence some days, laughter on others. The land began to feel alive again. But peace doesn't last forever. 2 weeks passed. James was preparing dinner when the door burst open. Koa ran in, breathless. "They're back," he panted, "and they brought someone else." James froze. Koa looked at Diep. "You need to hide." "No," James said firmly. "I won't let them touch her again." They stepped outside. The same 2 thugs waited, only this time accompanied by a third man, older, sharper, dressed in a crisp white shirt. This was the man James owed the original debt to, Ly Tu. "So this is the famous Diep," Ly Tu said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've heard quite a bit about you." "Cut to the point," James snapped. "You said 2 weeks. I'm trying to pay it off." Ly Tu shrugged. "But you haven't, and I'm not known for patience." Suddenly he whistled, and 2 more men appeared from behind a truck. They grabbed Koa, dragging him forward. "No!" James lunged, but was held back. "We'll take a hostage," Ly Tu said coldly. "Just to motivate you, you've got 48 hours. Pay, or your friend's body washes up in the river." They shoved Koa into the back of their truck and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust. That night, James didn't sleep. He paced, haunted. Every wrong turn he'd made had led here. But something inside him had changed. He wasn't going to run anymore. He opened the shed behind their house and pulled out a dusty metal box. Inside were papers, land deeds, an old certificate for a rice paddy he inherited from his father, a legal asset. He turned to Diep. "We can sell this. It's not much, but it'll get us close." She looked at him. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure." By the next afternoon, James had sold the land and gathered enough to settle the debt. He called Ly Tu, arranged a meeting at a public park in town. Ly Tu arrived with his men, and with Koa bound and bruised. James handed him the money. "This clears everything. You stay away from me and her." Ly Tu counted, then smiled. "You're lucky, James. Most men in your position end up in a ditch." He signalled, and Koa was released. As they left, Lua looked back. "Let's hope I don't see you again." Back at the farm, James sat in the garden, watching the sun dip behind the hills. Diep joined him, handing over a cup of tea. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me." She smiled. "You're the one who didn't give up on yourself." He took her hand. "I can't undo what I did, but I promise, from now on, no more lies, no more gambling, just us, the farm, a life we build, not one we risk." Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, they both believed it. James's gambling spirals out of control, leading him into the hands of dangerous loan sharks. When he's cornered and beaten, Diep shows up unexpectedly, risking everything to protect the man she loves. Her courage buys them 2 weeks, but the threats don't end there. As James begins the path to recovery, attending therapy and helping on the farm, their peaceful days are shattered again when the real boss, Lua, arrives. He kidnaps James's friend, demanding full payment. With time running out, James sacrifices his last piece of inheritance to save Koa and finally clear his debts. Through pain, honesty, and self-reflection, James finds redemption, and Diep, though bruised by his lies, stands by him. In the end, they begin anew, together with nothing but hope, the land, and a promise of a better life.